I'm starting my journal stitching project today, and I'll be primarily sharing about creating a scroll, but I'll also be sharing the setup process for working on a square or a rectangular piece. So no matter what format you've decided to make your journal scroll, you'll be able to get started today. First, we'll attach a base fabric, and then we'll dive right in to starting a collage and adding lettering, in this case, the year. There will be tips on how to get your numbers or letters to look crisp, and ideas about how to start embellishing your collage pieces. You may want to watch the first video for the stitch along, and that talks about all the supplies that you need to get started, as well as covering multiple options in terms of size, shape, and configuration. And if you're all ready to go, then let's get started. So the piece of felt that I'm using to start my scroll is 3 1/4 by 12.5 inches. That's 8 by 32 centimeters. I'm choosing a piece of this dark blue cotton voile to cover this section of my scroll in. And it's just slightly wider than my piece of felt. When I lay it out there, I can see that I have fabric on both the top and the bottom, and I'm going to lay it out so that I have some at the beginning and the end. So I'm going to trim that piece of fabric. And now I want to baste it in place. So I have this green sewing thread that I'm going to use. You can use a matching color if you want. I like to use a contrasting color because it's easier for me to see, but you can always see it on the back too. So really any color will do. So I'm going to knot my thread, and I'm going to start at one end, and I'm going to take small stitches on the front and then travel across the back and take another small stitch. I'm going to use a zigzag pattern and go slightly higher and lower with each stitch. Now, if you're stitching a square piece or a larger piece, a good way to base that fabric down is to start in the middle and to work in a spiral until you get to the edges. And that's going to secure your fabric without unnecessary puckering or shifting. This thread is almost long enough to make it to the end, not quite, but that's enough to get that secured into place. So I'm going to start working on the left side. And on the right side, I'm going to leave that because I'm planning to add to this scroll as I go along. So I'm going to leave that fabric raw. So at the beginning here, if I want to, I can fold over these edges and secure them to the back. It's not necessary. This step can be done later after I've added some collage, and even at the end if you want. I think I want to fold these under now to give myself some nice clean edges, and it's going to help me when I'm building my collage visually to see where my actual edges are. So I can make some nice mitered corners here. So I'm going to use some black sewing thread to stitch under these edges. And to do that, I'm going to flip my piece over and simply fold the fabric to the back and use a running stitch to secure it. When I get to the corner, I'm going to fold it similar to the way that you would fold a present. I'm going to fold up those sides and make a triangle shape, and then fold it again and take a couple stitches in the corner and stitch that down. And I'm going to continue to move around that way. I put a pin here where I want to stop. So I've really just secured this one side. And that's because I want to give myself the option to remove the piece of fabric on the right side if I want to change my background color and not have this whole first area dark. And if I decide I want to keep it dark, I can fold down those edges later. But for now, I've got this left side where I can start building and stitching on my scroll. So I've pulled out this piece of bright blue fabric. I really like the way that that stands out against that dark navy blue. And I want to start by stitching 2026. So I've got my friction erasable pen. This is heat erasable. And I'm going to write the year right onto that fabric. And now that I have that written there, I know where I want to cut this piece. So I'm going to trim off that excess. And I can even fray those edges so they're all the same. Now I want to place this, find the exact spot I want it to be. And now I'm going to baste it down in place. So I have some white thread here, and I'm going to baste that down. The nice thing about using different colors of basting thread is it's going to be easier when I pull the basting stitches out, that I don't pull out in the areas where I'm not ready to remove them. And I can see exactly where I'm taking those basting stitches out. So here, if I wanted to, I could dive right in and I can stitch those numbers. I'm feeling right now that I want to add some color, some additional color. So I've pulled out these bright orange colors, and this one has some red in it. I'm really liking those dots. It's making me think of New Year's and fireworks and celebrations. So I'm going to snip off a piece of this fabric. I'm thinking about surrounding this piece. I could overlap. I could put them side by side. Just playing with it to find the placement that I like. So I've made this strip even thinner. Now I have two. I could put one on each side. For now, I know that I like the look of this one here. So I'm just going to grab my needle and thread and baste that into place. So this is really a back and forth process. You can really do what you feel like. If you feel like stitching, then you can stitch. If you want to build collage, build collage. It's really up to you. There's no specific order that you have to build this in. It's your journal stitching. You choose. So now that I have this piece in place, I can start thinking about what I want to do next. So now let's take a look at my square journal stitching. It's a 10 by 10 piece. So let's see some of the different ways that I began to add collage. So for this bright yellow piece, I've pulled out some fabrics. I'm going to start with this green square of fabric and baste that in place. And then adding other fabrics in reaction to that very first square. So I've pulled these yellow shaded fabrics and I like the looks of those. So I'm going to trim them down and pull out some pins to hold them in place. And instead of basting here, I want to dive right into stitching. So I've pulled out some green floss that matches that first green square, and I'm going to use that to stitch all the way around this first yellow piece of fabric. And I'm on a roll here, so I'm going to continue with this same color floss, and I'm using 2 strands, and I'm going to use these straight stitches to surround this piece of fabric. And now I'm going to continue adding more pieces and building this out. So I have these 2 pieces here, and I've decided I want to baste them in place because I haven't decided yet what kind of stitching I want to do on them. So you really can do whatever you feel like. Baste things down or just put them right on the piece and stitch them, whatever works for you. At this point, I've decided that I want to fold those edges under, and that's going to help me get a better look at the actual size of my stitching. So I'm going to fold those edges under and use a running stitch and create those mitered corners, folding those in and stitching it down all the way around. So now let's turn back to the scroll and see the progress on that one. So I'm going to take this other strip of fabric and I'm going to snip off a small piece, put it up here at the corner. I like the way that looks, so I'm going to put one at the bottom too. Now this other piece that's left over, I'm going to save that and add that somewhere else in my scroll. So I'm going to baste these small pieces down with my thread. So they're attached now and I don't have to worry about them falling off. And now I'm looking at my date and I feel like it's time to stitch those. So I'm choosing to stitch them in white. I'm using embroidery floss and I'm choosing 2 strands of that floss. There's more than one way that you can stitch letters and numbers. One of them is the back stitch. You take a stitch and you go forward and come out and put your needle back in where that first stitch came out, just like this. But another way that's really pretty is to use a split stitch. And because I have 2 strands of floss, I can split this thread, putting my needle in between the 2 strands of floss. I'm taking really small stitches. I'm not going very far from my last stitch. Because there's so many corners and twists and turns when you're doing numbers and letters, it's a good idea to take very small stitches. So I'm going past where my last stitch is. I'm coming out, and when I go back to where my previous stitch was, I'm going in the middle of that stitch, splitting those 2 strands apart, putting my needle there and pulling it through. That gives a beautiful appearance, almost like chain links. So I'm going to continue to work my way around this number 2, taking the tiniest of stitches around corners. And when I'm finished that number, I can hop right to the next and start doing the same thing with this oval shape of the 0. And I'm just going to keep going like this, creating these split stitches. Now I'm on the last number, the 6, and the round part at the bottom of the 6 is a very tight circle, so my stitches are really small. And after creating that small circle, I'm going to go back up and do the last part of that number 6. And now I can take a look at my numbers and see if I'm happy with them. And I think they're looking really nice. Now, one thing I can do is go back and make some little tweaks to the areas that I notice aren't the way I want them. And the place I'm noticing is in this first 2, where I'd started to do some backstitch before I did the split stitch. And that's easy to fix. I'm going to come in from the back. I'm going to put my knot just beside where I'm going to stitch. And then I'm going to come up right in the middle of those first few stitches that I took, creating that beautiful split stitch look. And that looks much better to me. And if there are any other areas that you think need small tweaks, you can just go ahead and add 1 or 2 tiny stitches to finish everything off. So there's my 2026. And I like the way that white is showing up on that bright, bright blue. So I've pulled out a floss color that's very close to this orange red. This color leans more towards the orange, which is what I want here. I want this to come out as more of an orange than a red. So I'm going to get a length of thread. A good rule of thumb for how long your thread should be is to hold the end of the thread in your hand and stretch the thread up your arm and cut it when it's about an arm's length, maybe a little shorter than an arm's length, no more than about 20 inches. And I'm going to separate out 2 strands of floss from these 6 strands, and I'm going to start stitching around. And you can really start anywhere that you want to. I could go around these small pieces and around the blue piece at the same time, or I can start over here on the right with this taller piece. And when I come to the place where the blue and the orange meet, I can take larger stitches so that the orange shows up on both pieces of fabric. So I'm going to start at the bottom here. I'm moving my way up. And now that I'm where the blue is, I'm going to take longer stitches and I'm going to put them closer together. And then when I'm finished moving up that side of the blue, I'm going to start spacing out my stitches some more. And I'm going to work my way all around that large piece of orange. So here's my first round of stitching. At this point I can continue to add more stitch, or I can add more collage. And that's the beauty of this. You can just do whatever you feel like doing next. So I've gone ahead and added that reddish orange around these smaller snippets, as well as surrounding my year in this bright contrasting color. And now that these collage pieces are secure, I can remove the basting stitches as well. I decided I want to keep working on this dark navy blue background. So I folded the edges of the next section to the back and I tacked them down. And now I'm ready to add more collage and stitching in this next portion of the scroll. Next time we'll be adding to our collage and start using the tracing templates, both the nature and season set of 16 and the mini animal set. I'll provide links if you'd like to get your own. What are you going to do on your journal scroll? Are you going to start it by putting the date? Maybe you want to put your name, or maybe you want to write the month. It's completely up to you. If you're making a scroll, it makes sense to start on the left side and start moving to the right. If you're working on a square piece, you can really start anywhere. Just dive in and have fun. Don't worry about it. Just give yourself permission to get started. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope your journal stitching is off to a great start. It's not too late to sign up for the Stitch Along and find out how you can share your progress. Until next time, happy stitching.